Greetings to all. I am Sawsan V4 an Emirati visual artist. I am a graduate of UAE University from the Department of Art Education. Well, of course, I've spent many years working in this particular field, specifically at the Cultural Foundation for a period of 30 years. And currently I am retired and fully dedicated to art, fulfilling my artistic duty, which is to convey artistic information in an academic way, because I am essentially a teacher.
Well, today our workshop is going to be about the use of lines and shapes in an artistic piece, specifically by utilizing ink. Of course, this particular art form is quite ancient, not a recent development, and certainly most educators are already familiar with this artistic style. However, we will be presenting it in a fresh and innovative manner that is designed to achieve the program's objectives within the Year of the Family initiative, and also to incorporate national identity into the artistic pieces that each student will be working on. Of course, this particular art form is considered one of the most ancient, because in the past there weren't many colors available. So they would use just one color, specifically black ink, to create various designs and sketches to record historical events or any.
This thing, whether it was found in churches, in people's homes, within various cultures, or across different civilizations, such as the Assyrian civilization and the Greek civilizations.
All of these arts are present, and I expect that most teachers have a good idea.
Enough about that, but today on the program we're simply aiming to reactivate this topic and discuss how we might present it to the students this year, because we haven't really seen it addressed in previous years. So we thought, why not try to bring it up, not to diminish your role as teachers, but rather just as a gentle reminder, nothing more. Of course, we're going to discuss the very first type of this, which is the art of calligraphy. Calligraphy is essentially the use of simple lines, importantly, without ever needing to use a ruler. It's about employing curved lines that are intricately intertwined with one another, ultimately to create a beautifully simple form. So, for example, if I wanted to draw something like the sea, I would be able to use this particular style of lines. This is because the sea, for instance, has waves, it possesses a certain fluidity, and I couldn't possibly use a straight line with a ruler or even a perspective drawing method, because that simply wouldn't be suitable for the specific topic that I'm going to be talking about. And regarding the lines that we're going to use, they will be interlocking lines, so that I can manage to create a cohesive and interconnected piece of work. It's true, my practical work will feature more than one shape. We'll be incorporating more than one type of calligraphy script, but I personally prefer that we utilize all the techniques within a single artwork. I'll also be using more than one theme in that same piece. The main and most important objective, however, is national identity and the Year of the Family.
Now, regarding the lines, as you can clearly see, you'll notice that these are not straight lines at all, but rather they are curved lines. These are typically used by an individual, or perhaps a student, or even an artist in certain areas where they perceive a need for them.
Its pliability, or the way it is, like sand dunes, like some parts, like fabrics, like clothes. He uses this technique because it helps him explain the subject simply and freehand, that is manually. He doesn't need to use a ruler. He uses it directly by hand. Of course, every single type of line and its specific thickness will naturally vary, as we've already mentioned, depending on the particular kind of pen and the number that's clearly marked upon the pen itself. The second type, or rather the second art form, involves the incorporation of numerous elements that are blended together for practical applications, such as natural foliage like leaves. These are elements that are sourced from, as we previously mentioned, for instance, from various parts of, from different types of wood. From water droplets, from the leaf, there are some lines and patterns present. If we place a magnifying glass on it, we will clearly see them. So this is something that he could potentially use for some things.
So naturally, the technique of stippling using dot, he always employs it to explain the sense of dimension in various shapes, in faces, in the curves, or for instance, in facial features. The most common thing people use are points,
because points, they are very, very tiny points, and a person can really control them to create a complete portrait of a face, all done with points. The third type, which we're discussing, is sketching. A sketch, you see, is essentially composed of lines that simply explain the interplay of light and shadow, but it truly adds a profound depth to the artistic work. So it's most commonly used by artists for backgrounds, specifically in the background areas. We can certainly employ this particular technique, and it's quite effective for still life compositions. So if someone were to draw a dala, if they wish to depict a dala, they could utilize this method to illustrate the interplay of light and shadow on the dala and how to make this particular element stand out in a three-dimensional manner employing this technique. Naturally, we will elaborate on this. Indeed, numerous renowned international artists, as we previously mentioned, this particular art form is far from being a recent development.
It has been around since very ancient times and is perhaps considered one of the earliest art forms that artists have ever utilized.
We'll take the example of the artist Hassan Sharif, may he rest in peace, one of the prominent Emirati artists who incorporated these specific lines into some of his artistic creations quite distinctly. He utilized them in a beautiful manner, and he also skillfully applied colors within them. He used, because the primary inks are typically black, but he incorporated colors like, for instance, blue, purple, and in some instances, he applied these colors to the lines in an abstract fashion. This means he explained the subject in an abstract, not a realistic manner. So naturally, these represent some of the initial works that the artist Hassan Sharif employed in some of his artistic creations during a particular phase of his artistic journey within the realm of fine art in the United Arab Emirates. I want the student to really consider combining, to think about merging the images. They'll need to use more than one picture. I don't really prefer that the student uses just a single image. Instead, I'd prefer them to use 3 or 4 pictures in their composition, and then they can begin to execute the final piece. Zigzag art, of course, is a very simple art form that uses the zigzag method for filling up empty spaces within a piece of work. Whenever I have a large area, I will certainly use this particular technique, allowing me to effectively fill that void both rapidly and with great ease. The student is able to utilize these areas, for instance, within structures. Therefore, if a student possesses a building that contains numerous available spaces, they are capable of employing this particular technology. The third technique is stippling. Stippling as a method allows for the use of individual dots, dots that can be either dark or light in their shading, or dots that are quite thick or very thin in their form. This naturally is determined by the specific thickness of the pen that the artist will be using when applying this particular technique. Naturally, we will later observe in the course materials how he can effectively utilize these specific points and through them articulate the interplay of shadow and light. The third category of lines, of course, consists of those that are straight and continuous. Straight lines involve using straight lines that are parallel to each other, allowing one to use a ruler to ensure the work is clean and tidy, or alternatively, one can rely entirely on their own skill when drawing these lines. Of course, he might use the straight line as a completely continuous one, or he might use the line to create a dotted separator between one line and another. Well, naturally, all these lines, these are the 4 distinct types that we can effectively employ together within a single piece of work. Of course, as we've mentioned, these specific lines will clearly illustrate the interplay of shadow and light, which is what the student should focus on to ensure the artwork achieves a harmonious balance. So it's not just about me using these techniques in a completely random way. No, I absolutely must understand where the shadows fall and where the light will be within the piece, and identify the strong points within the project that will clearly reveal to me the primary objective of the work that I intend to incorporate. Even when integrating the 4 different techniques into a single piece of work, it's essential that we pay close attention to the light and shadow within the piece, and also to the overall composition of the work as a whole. Of course, for example, today we will be discussing the workshop, specifically the calligraphy workshop and the use of ink, along with the techniques we mentioned earlier. Regarding the composition of the artwork, we would like you to participate with more than one image and then merge them together in a balanced artistic manner, as we've stated, while maintaining the national identity, which is the very foundation of the Creative Nation program and the Year of the Family. For example, in a project like this one, we utilized the Qasr al-Husn fort, the ancient fort structure itself, alongside the more modern buildings, together with palm trees or the cedar and calf trees, which are among the indigenous trees that have always been present in the United Arab Emirates. For the family, we can certainly feature individuals. We can also showcase the dining tables, the elaborate food spreads where families gather together at the end of each and every week. We can also depict children playing happily and freely in the courtyards and the many popular traditional games that are abundantly found throughout the United Arab Emirates, such as Karam and also the traditional game of Al-Ajal. There are many different things that you could potentially use in these outdoor spaces, or even for men to gather as an outdoor majlis for families outside the home. Today we're going to discuss the work and how I can balance it so that when a viewer sees the work, they will be able to perceive a product. This product is an Emirati work taken from the Emirati identity, meaning it has a distinct Emirati character. I mean, I don't want the work to be taken from just any Arab thing. No, we're talking about Emirati identity. So the work should be inspired by the elements around us that instill national identity in the student and how the student interprets them in their work. The UAE is perhaps one of those countries with many different cultures, so a student might feel a bit unsettled regarding certain topics or some specific elements, but the teacher must guide them in the right way, and they need to have a clear understanding of whether this particular element is Emirati or not. As we mentioned regarding business mergers, the merge of course must be a talib. Every teacher needs to ensure that the pose elements the student will be using in creating the artwork pose must be genuinely Emirati, symbolizing our national identity, which is the primary objective of the Creative Nation program, and it must be posed. And among them are some elements, of course, for the family's work. You will, of course, certainly have poster-specific elements that the student must ensure are authentically Emirati. The program has provided you with numerous sources which were carefully selected and extensively studied to guarantee they are genuinely Emirati, well-researched and post-accurate. So it would be possible for every single teacher to go back to this particular source to make sure that this specific item is either Emirati or from the Gulf region, or Arabic, so that there isn't any mistake, and they will actually remove the students' work from the program if the element isn't related to the national identity, which is of course the Emirati identity. Therefore, in any integration scenario, it is crucial that all elements incorporated into the work are accurate and strictly derived from the primary reference. Alternatively, if there is any lack of understanding, you should refer to the program management team, and they will clarify any questions you may have. All right, so now we're going to start explaining, or rather showcasing, the materials that the student will be using in this workshop. First, we'll look at the papers. For the paper, specifically for the ink, we can use 150-gram paper. Even in papers, you'll find various shades of white. There's pure bright white, and then there's off-white. He can use absolutely any color he wants, even all the different ones. And for watercolor paper, if I'm going to incorporate watercolors into the artwork at the very end of the process, then it is absolutely essential that I use watercolor paper that is 300 grams. It must clearly state 300 grams on the sheet itself. If the paper is of lower quality when you're using it for watercolors, you'll find that its ability to absorb water will be quite poor. But with 300 grams, he'll be able to use the water with ease and comfort, because it's the very last stage, a critical point where he either completely ruins the entire project or he makes it a resounding success. This is something that's entirely optional for him in how he uses this in his work, but it's all about making us appear in a fresh, modern way. We add some colors to help the student truly enjoy the experience of colors, because most students in their early developmental stages really love colors. If the work is merely black and white, they might easily feel a sense of boredom, so the introduction of vibrant color will certainly help them to fully enjoy it. We're going to be We'll be using, of course, as we've already mentioned, watercolors on 300-gram paper, and this is absolutely essential. For example, those who don't prefer using watercolors can certainly use colored pencils instead. We could use pastel colors, or perhaps we might not use any colors at all. This is entirely up to the student and how they ultimately choose to present their work. Of course, the main preference will always be the students. I can't really force him to use this specific thing, but all the techniques will be applied with this ink, because this ink actually has various grades. The grades, it includes 01, 02, 03. It will help him to create the shapes in a technically correct and proper way. And it will also assist him in understanding how he can effectively fill the various available spaces with these shapes, especially if he happens to be utilizing a very large area. Naturally, for our demonstration today, we will be using a relatively small space, primarily because of the time limitations we have. But you're going to see that there are numbers. These particular numbers were not placed there arbitrarily, of course. Every single one of these numbers holds a specific meaning. The size of the nib, you see, it differs from one pen to another, for instance. Some pens will have a very, very fine point. And then there are pens that will have a thick, bold line. Everything depends on the numerical markings that are present on the pen. And these particular pens are also completely waterproof. Waterproof means that if you happen to get water on them, they will not be damaged or ruined. So for this reason, if you're going to draw a line, you'll need to be aware that the line you're about to place, you absolutely must know where the student is going to put their line or their dot, because there's no way for them to erase it at all. So it's absolutely not recommended that we use a corrector during the scanning process, because if I were to use a corrector to try and fix the mistake, I would simply end up ruining the entire work. And then the students would be forced to redo the whole assignment right from the very beginning. This work that he's about to undertake will not be an easy one, because he'll be using the lines, he'll be using the points. If he makes even one single mistake, he won't be able to correct it. So for that, the work must be pre-composed and a thoroughly thought-out sketch. The student draws, then proceeds with the assembly and handles various other tasks. So he carefully selects the specific pens that he intends to use for the project.
Where is he going to put it? Where is he going to put the shapes? Then he'll implement.
You can't just execute the work while you're still trying to figure things out. This is quite different from working with oil or acrylic paintings, because with those, I always have the option to make corrections. No, not here. The student really needs to study the work, then create the blueprint, arrange the forms, and only then proceed with the actual task. So to achieve this, we'll go through it together, step by step. We'll prepare some boxes to illustrate the various shapes. And after that, we'll be able to utilize them. Well, naturally, the very first step that we're going to undertake, as we've already stated, is of course, after we integrate all the various components or elements that we intend to utilize within the artistic piece, we will then commence with the actual execution. We will not, however, be executing the final completed work. First, as we've already mentioned, the student absolutely must study and actively engage their mind in considering how they will utilize the patterns we've discussed, whether as foundational lines or specific points within the work. All of this before they actually begin to execute the project. This preparation will then serve as a crucial reference point for them throughout the entire duration of the period they will be actively engaged in working on their specific project. We're going to start, we're going to make squares, small squares using a ruler, of course, we can divide the board, or rather the paper, into, for example, 10 squares, 12 squares, or even 13 squares. The more we subdivide these squares, the greater the opportunity we provide for students to initiate their thought processes and delve deeper. This specific phase right here is incredibly crucial, as it will actively stimulate their cognitive functions. They will search throughout their entire environment, they'll look carefully among the trees, they'll inspect the very walls, and they'll meticulously explore the floors. How he will then produce the various shapes that he intends to use in his artwork, specifically as elements of light and shadow. So after we create these squares, we give them to the student, of course, with the pens we previously mentioned, which have specific measurements. He will then begin to think. For instance, if he were to observe a tree leaf, a leaf, its primary color is green, isn't that right? However, if we were to place it under a powerful magnifying glass, we would then observe numerous intricate, interconnected lines and remarkably diverse shapes. If we were to look at rocks, if we were to take a rock and place it under a magnifying glass, we would truly find within it lines and curves and shapes and triangles that the human eye simply cannot comprehend or even perceive just by looking at them. So from these very things, this art form truly emerged. And so within these squares, the student will begin. We'll provide them with the opportunity to discover how they can effectively utilize these specific patterns in each individual square, ensuring that every single square is distinctly different from the one next to it. For example, Right now, I'll be using lines. I'll use these lines to create a specific form. Of course, after we've created the squares, we give the student, because for each sheet of paper, I prefer that the student makes more than 12 or 13 squares. This gives them a chance for creativity and thinking, and they can give each square a shape that's different from the others.
For example, right now, we're going to begin creating all of the lines. For instance, in this particular square, I'm going to quickly use a set of full, complete lines.
For the second square, for example, I am able to make use of the circles.
For example, in a square, I'll be using the various shapes that are derived from wood.
You'll find that truly beautiful forms appear when I enlarge, or rather when I magnify any kind of wood. Each piece will inherently possess its own unique and distinct internal grain patterns.
The student is able to make use of it within this specific area. For example, there are the zigzag shapes that we have already mentioned.
The most crucial aspect is that every single square should present a detailed study of a unique subject or a distinct methodology. I wouldn't, for example, create a situation where I've made 6 squares, all of them exactly the same shape. No, because when a student comes to implement the task, they'll find themselves without options, they'll have no fresh ideas, so they'll inevitably halt midway through the process and won't be able to fully complete the project itself. For instance, I might choose to use various triangles.
Small triangles, large triangles, I put them together, I distribute them in different ways. I train him to use pens of various sizes. You'll find some pens are thick, and I can use those to fill in the larger areas. So it's going to help me fill up the space much more quickly. For instance, I can create like various lines.
It's quite different.
The most important thing for me is that each square has a different study from the next one, and it uses all the different types of lines available from the pens, because each pen, as we mentioned, has a certain thickness, and that will be used for a specific purpose. We might use the grid method, which they call shabak, like a fishing net. There are certain forms, for example, that we can utilize from the leaves of the gaff tree. The gaff tree, it's essentially a tree with very fine, thin leaves. So I can use them. And regarding the gaff tree, I specifically use these particular branches along with all of their leaves to achieve precisely the same kind of shading effect. So we're going to take a moment to look at it together, and then we can clearly see how it is possible for us to make use of it. And we abstract it. I don't necessarily have to employ it in a strictly correct fashion, but what I aim to convey to you is that, for example, I can render it in an abstract style, yet I will always be conscious that I've derived this specific component from the foliage of the gaff or cedar trees. And some flowers are found in the in the UAE. Pause the desert of the UAE, pause the desert of the air. Pause, it's not just sand. Pause, but there are so many things. Pause, so many plants. Pause, so many flowers. Pause, I mean, and the colors of these flowers. Pause the yellow colors. Pause the purple colors. There are flowers that possess the remarkable ability to withstand the intense heat of this particular region. So, if I were to truly emphasize and showcase these unique elements within an artistic creation, I would effectively highlight the profound richness of Emirati heritage that is deeply embedded within the desert itself. You see, perhaps most people only perceive the desert as merely sand and camels, and nothing more than that. But no, even the sand dunes, I can certainly interpret them within this framework. The sand dunes have undulations, and in this work, I can explain those undulations of the sand dunes, thereby giving the student the opportunity to abstract these sand dunes for me in this very piece. Perhaps I could use the stars, for example, and then I'd give him the opportunity to show me how he might be able to create a sky in the form of stars.
And as I've mentioned, we always try to use a different pen each time. In certain places, I'll find myself able to do some shading.
In certain places, I only use lines, and this depends on the specific form I intend to use where I'll be applying it. Will I use it for illumination, or in a brightly lit area or a darker region? So at this point, the pen's thickness and the way the shapes interrelate will vary. Of course, now you're going to see, for example, this paper I have here has several shapes, each one different from the other.
The undulating form, the circular design, and the zigzag pattern. Some shapes are actually derived from the specific fabrics that are used. Emirati fabrics in the traditional Emirati attire are distinguished by their vibrant colors and their many intricate lines. I might also incorporate the batila fabric, which inherently features a circular motif.
We have a lot of different kinds of fabrics available. We have the Misa fabric. We also have Batira. All of these, I can potentially use them for this very same topic.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the pens, you see, their thickness is determined by their position in relation to both shadow and light. I mean, I simply cannot use, if the particular drawing requires a lot of light, I can't just go and use a very thick pen for that. Instead, it's essential that I use light shading and a much finer, lighter pen.
A dark area, a very dark one, I typically employ a thicker, darker pen for these sections. Subsequently, when I decide to incorporate colors, if I feel like adding some vibrant hues, I then introduce the illumination and highlights through the chosen color itself. This entire process is purely to impart a sense of enjoyment and visual appeal to the artwork. Nothing more, nothing less.
I just want to focus on this type of study. It's essential for every student to conduct it before commencing any project, so they don't find themselves halted midway through the task, unsure of how to proceed. Then we will discover that, for instance, numerous forms are emanating from the nation's skies. Our sky is truly lovely and beautiful.
We have got the clouds.
The rain, and of course in buildings. For example, I will use tile clay, the old clay buildings, and have different forms. Even the buildings, the decorations found in the buildings. All of this I can use in this study that the student will be conducting.
Then we start planning the work we've prepared or integrated using these elements. First, of course, we'll define the area we'll work in and ink it
with the measurement that will be available to us.
And as I've mentioned to you previously, these specific inks or pens are waterproof. This means that once you've put down a line, you won't be able to erase or correct it at all unless you're going to employ your own clever technique for making corrections. But please, I urge you, do not use any kind of corrector fluid, because using a corrector will absolutely ruin the entire piece of work.
Of course, we'll definitely benefit from AI in areas like integration, merging, and various other related tasks. Pause. It will certainly help us significantly speed up the entire process of image compilation and assembly. Pause. However, we must not place our complete and total reliance on artificial intelligence for the actual creative composition itself.
Just for me to gather all the work, artificial intelligence or AI is there to assist me. Of course, this is the new system that's currently available, and everyone should really be taking advantage of it to minimize or significantly cut down the amount of time that I'll be able to spend on it. However, it's not going to be the one doing the thinking for me, nor is it going to be the one carrying out the execution.
It's merely a supplementary component, nothing more than that. So dependence on it should be quite minimal.
After we define the square, we start with a pencil to place. Of course, we draw the shape that will be, and I'm using buildings here. The buildings must be geometrically correct because the geometry in buildings requires us to consider this using perspective.
The perspective, it's basically 2 points. 1 point positioned on the right and another point placed on the left. From these, I start drawing my lines so that the entire composition, the line itself, is moving in the correct direction. These specific points really help me. When I'm drawing a line, making sure it's geometrically precise or ensuring a building is constructed correctly, it's essential that every single point must connect to the main point, even if it's a curved line.
For example, if I were to draw a line for a wall that absolutely needs to connect to this particular point, I would then find that the line is indeed at an angle, but it still manages to reach that exact same destination, no matter how steep its inclination might be.
If it's intended to go to the right, it will instead move to the left, and if it's meant for the left, it will then shift to the right regarding the crucial point that we are currently discussing. For this very reason, I will now present two distinct points. This is regarding the perspective of the building that we are going to be working on currently.
Naturally, for building projects, I'll be using the ruler as my primary instrument.
For buildings, I'll primarily be using a ruler so that the line comes out following the perspective that I've established and is perfectly straight. Because any line that isn't straight, the viewer's eye, when looking at the artwork, will immediately show that it's shaky or rather unstable. So the line absolutely must be straight.
By using a ruler, and this might be the only element that you will find yourselves having to use rulers for,
the remaining elements are going to be completely freehand.
As I've said, any point must converge to the vanishing point for the work to progress correctly. I mean, I can't just create a random shape, place the ruler to the right, then a moment later arbitrarily move it to the left. No, if I'm going to incorporate buildings, I have to be very precise with them.
I'm going to set forth my principal ideas at the outset, and then
I'll begin by eliminating the areas I don't need and retaining only those I wish to keep. Now, of course, after we've completed the initial pencil sketch and carefully verified the perspective, the various shapes, and the overall composition, we will then move on to the inking phase.
For inking, we will naturally use the ruler because we are working on a structured design. So we shouldn't use the ruler in its basic straight edge form. It's necessary to flip the ruler because if I use it normally, the ink could potentially bleed from underneath it, especially if I'm using a slightly thicker pen. And then sometimes the student might not see the line they're working on. So I flip the ruler and start placing it on the spot I'm going to use, and I can then see it. He needs to draw the line very calmly, without any rush, because as I've told you, once we've drawn a line, we can't correct it.
So, we'll begin by establishing our primary guidelines in order to clearly define the overall structure that we will be developing later on.
Of course, in some places, we won't need a ruler. And in some places, as I told you, we have to use a ruler because buildings are a visual for the viewer.
So if the line isn't quite right, as we've mentioned, you'll notice that when someone views the piece, they'll actually tend to lean along with that line. But if the line is perfectly straight and correct, they'll find themselves truly drawn into the work, perceiving it as three-dimensional.
We continue our lines, of course.
We're going to continue using the exact same pen. At this current moment, there's no need for us to alter the pen's thickness because as of now, we are merely in the process of setting up the main fundamental rules for how this work will proceed.
As I've told you, one really needs to be quite calm when dealing with the tasks that's right in front of them. Of course, it's possible these pens or this artistic scale are often utilized by many engineers when they're sketching their projects, their various engineering designs. You'll certainly find them to be more experienced. Perhaps engineers can actually draw this line perfectly without needing a ruler. So, that's why we try not to make any mistakes, so the engineer doesn't laugh at us and say, you don't know how to draw. So we have to be very precise with them.
After we've inked the work with one line, we can now benefit from the study the student completed. Each student will have the study they have completed right before them, and they will then apply this knowledge to the artistic work they are creating, carefully considering the interplay of light and shadow and how to best make their artistic piece stand out beautifully for the observer. Of course, we'll be using pens with different measurements according to how he utilized them in the study. He will apply them in the exact same manner in his work, taking into consideration the light and shadow that are present in his workspace. We will begin by using, for example, I will use this particular section. For instance, this one, I will then proceed to use this specific shape, which is number 1. I'm going to select a deep interior location where I can effectively utilize this particular shape. The aim is to truly highlight that this specific area possesses a subtle dimness, not excessively dark, but rather imbued with a distinct sense of shadow or depth. So I will proceed with that, and as we previously mentioned, the ruler absolutely must be inverted.
In a calm and measured way, I can create these specific lines and then accurately translate the overall form. You will see that my selection here is for shapes of straight lines, as we discussed earlier regarding the elements, the various types of lines, but these lines are intertwined with each other, so that it creates a beautiful form that people can truly enjoy, and they can appreciate that this artist or student dedicated a significant amount of time to this study and to this work and was not at all careless or negligent with it.
He was able to highlight the elements, the national identity within it. He was able to highlight the artistic elements like shadow and light in this particular work. That's why we questioned, why is this specific study even here? It helps the student to significantly shorten the time spent on the work and to fully grasp it. This applies to any artistic endeavor for any artist, not just a student, for instance. And this is exactly what the instructor needs to cultivate within the student. Every artist, before starting any work, must conduct a thorough study, research, and a preliminary sketch. Only then should they begin the execution. However, if they commence the execution without completing these essential preliminary steps, they will inevitably encounter problems midway through the work. So, anything a person undertakes in life, whether it's a project or any other endeavor, absolutely requires careful study. Artistic creations are precisely the same. I understand the capabilities, the raw potential that is readily available. For instance, this pen is just an ink pen, but it possesses its own unique capabilities. So how can I effectively utilize these inherent capabilities in my work? How do I truly benefit from my work?
Of course, as we're working, we always make sure to maintain the cleanliness of the project, meaning specifically the board itself.
The evaluator or the individual who works with artistic pieces becomes quite displeased when they receive a work that's messy, unclean, unposed, or doesn't take into account that this piece will be displayed in an exhibition.
People are going to see this. So we must maintain the integrity and professionalism of our work and ensure it reaches the party that will display it in a clean and well-organized manner for presentation.
In order to prevent the work from being disqualified by the judging committees.
So that this is something incredibly important. I mean, it could be an absolutely magnificent piece of work, but the student might have been quite negligent in its handling, or perhaps delivers the work to the reviewing authority in a manner that is simply inappropriate.
So that's why, whether we're working ourselves or instructing a student, we emphasize the importance of working calmly, cleanly, and in an organized manner, ensuring that the final piece of work is delivered without any smudges or stains. For instance, since we're dealing with ink, a student might, for example, leave a pen uncapped, and then the ink could accidentally get onto the paper. So would I really submit the work in such a condition? No, that's simply not acceptable. For example, we've now finished with this particular space and we've used the first design. Then we can go back, for instance, and use, as we mentioned earlier, the specific leaves, which are the guff leaves. We'll talk about what we had discussed previously. So I might choose a specific area where I can effectively utilize these guff leaves. And then I will proceed to draw the leaves
abstractly, and then I can use a second grade of pen. I shade in the areas or the empty spaces between the pages. In this piece of work, we are attempting to incorporate every single one of the patterns or types that we previously discussed, such as straight lines, various circles, individual dots, distinct zigzags, and also gracefully curved elements. For instance, at this very moment, after I have completely finished sketching out the leaves, I am able to utilize a pen that is a little bit thicker and then proceed to fill in some of the remaining empty spaces.
In order that
The most prominent design that I made, and one that we, for example, talked about, is the second design we chose, which is the leaves of the guff tree. This type of art might take a little more time, meaning it's quite different from the rest, but it's truly enjoyable and really sparks the imagination. It significantly broadens the students' imagination, making them think deeply about how they can create, how they can truly stand out, how. So this is the distinct advantage of working with inks.
We will continue to repeat and emphasize this point. We are focusing our attention on the national identity, which is indeed the primary objective of this entire program, and naturally the Year of the Family. Naturally, my primary focus here will be directed towards our cherished national identity, because we are discussing the historically significant Qasr Al Hosn Fort, which serves as a truly fundamental element, a pivotal and main fortress within the Emirate of Abu Dhabi, representing the very essence of our civilization and our profound history, spanning both the glorious past and the vibrant present. After we've finished with the second area, we'll go back and choose a third area of a different type. For example, I'll be using this particular shape, which is taken from the desert sands, those specific forms that are characteristic of sand. So I will use a different pen and then I'll begin.
I'm going to create an abstract shape for the sand.
For example, here I used, as we discussed, the shapes that are taken from the desert sands. So I put spaces between them. What can I do? Should I add an additional line to emphasize that this particular space needs? If I want to achieve a deeper level of shading, then that naturally implies I'll have to add a greater number of extra lines. Or perhaps I might opt to use a significantly darker shade of color so that I can effectively fill the entire form or shape.
The second one will definitely give me depth. The depth of this space, we will observe here that each and every part.
We took the building and transformed it into a brand new shape. Each and every component was then translated into something unique, an element that is readily available in the environment all around us.
This is the very essence. What I need to ensure is conveyed from the artist or the student who is performing this work to the viewer who will ultimately watch this piece. We've now almost reached the point where we've successfully translated the study we conducted into the actual work we've created.
You will witness firsthand how we have skillfully transformed these various shapes and forms into a magnificent artistic masterpiece, allowing the viewer to fully immerse themselves and truly appreciate every detail of this unique artwork.
And as we mentioned, this study will remain with the student throughout every piece of work he undertakes. It will always be there for him. It will serve as a reference for him. So every student will eventually have their own reference. For example, we might have made 24 squares. He could add other different things. He could use symbols found in fabric, in the environmental elements around him, even a single drop of water. He can use it to create various shapes.
So this reference, the student will certainly keep it, they'll hold on to it because they can use it to perform these tasks and implement its principles in the work that they are doing.
Well, naturally, we're now going to embark upon a second phase. And this particular stage, it might in fact be entirely optional. There are some individuals who actually prefer the classic black and white,
the two opposites, what we call the contrasting colors, black and white. But we are currently living in an era of pure joy and happiness. And we are talking about this special year of the family. The family is full of joy, full of love, full of warm embrace, and full of beautiful flowers. The mother and father, they built and planted these flowers, which form the beautiful family in this precious homeland. So it's lovely that we use some colors to truly impress people with beautiful hues.
So we'll probably be using watercolors, or would you prefer that we use colored pencils? It's all the same, it won't make a huge difference. However, I personally prefer that we utilize some watercolors, and truly enjoy the process together. Naturally, as we previously discussed for the concluding section, we will either be employing watercolors or perhaps colored pencils. And there's always the option to blend both techniques. Art, you see, is inherently simple. Therefore, one's approach to it should also be quite straightforward.
So if I were to say I'm using watercolors, I could also use colored pencils so that I don't complicate things for the student by saying no, only watercolor is allowed. No, I can definitely use more than one medium in the same piece of work. And we've already mentioned that these inks are waterproof, meaning that even if I add a good amount of water, they won't wash away. So we're going to use watercolors, and I'll be using them, for instance, for the sky. So I'll add a certain amount of water.
I'm working on the paper in the specific area where I intend to create the beautiful color of the sky, which is blue, so I carefully blend the paint.
The unique feature of watercolors is their transparency. Their very name, watercolors, suggests a higher proportion of water than actual pigment.
And in a very simple fashion, I distribute the vibrant colors throughout the vast expanse of the sky.
That's why we mentioned, if I'm going to be using these specific watercolor paints, then I absolutely must start by using 300-gram watercolor paper. However, if I'm not going to be using this particular type of paint, then, any paper will be perfectly fine for me to work with ink. For example, I've put down the color of the sky. As we've already discussed, I can easily blend more than just one color. I'll also be using colored pencils for some of the specific areas within the drawing.
When I'm working with colored pencils, I always find it's much better to use a circular motion. Why do I prefer that? Because a straight shape or a straight stroke tends to create lines that are too harsh and aggressive.
You know, my artistic work is already, for the most part, primarily composed of lines. So in order to effectively break up the visual monotony of these lines, I then choose to incorporate color in a very simple and straightforward manner.
Of course, for us, young colors won't be the main thing, but it's something that shows a little bit of love for change. So it might not be that the whole project is colored.
Just certain parts. I mean, we've just finished the workshop today. Our workshop was, of course, about drawing with lines, specifically using ink. The main topic we focused on, of course, was something that really highlights our national identity, which is the primary theme for the Creative National Program and also the Family Year. So the student has the freedom to utilize these elements that are present in their surrounding environment, and the family, in any way that the student finds appropriate, and suitable for them, post it in a simple manner, and through it explain the techniques and the topics that we have discussed.